Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome everyone to this online session about developing successful solar PV projects in Italy. And Italy, as well as other European markets, has, as of a few months ago, couple of years ago, kind of recycled back into developing a lot of renewables, and we're really glad to see following this direction. And there is a lot of actually gigawatts expected in the next few years. And we're going to hear from three experts on this market today and where are the opportunities and where do they lay. So I'd like to ask you guys to introduce yourselves. So Andrea, please, could you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Hi, everyone. And I'm Andrea Ferrato, and I'm responsible for Italy and North Europe at ATA Renewables. I've been working in solar for 9 years now. I've been focused mainly on technical due diligence services in Italy, UK, and Australia. What about ATA Renewables? ATA is an engineering company, and since 2005 provides advisory and engineering services. We are in 3 continents with 5 offices, and we worked for a total of 80 gigawatts in RES projects so far.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrea. Full disclosure, he is one of my colleagues on the engineering arm. Next, I'd like to ask Carlo, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning to everybody, and thanks for inviting me to join this webinar. I'm the Global Deputy Business Unit Leader for the Energy and Infrastructure Practice at ORRIC, which is a US-based, West Coast-based international law firm. And my main focus is renewables, mainly in Europe and of course in Italy. So solar and wind are the main technologies where we focus our efforts on the legal side by covering project development, M&A, and finance.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carlo. And last but most certainly not least, Eleonora. Always glad to see women in these things. You know, we're a rare breed. Please, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, good morning. Thank you for this invitation to Belena, her team, and ATA Insights. I'm the head of business development for Italy for Energy and Power. As you probably know, is the first operator over the world in renewables with 46 gigawatt of capacity, installed capacity, something like plus more than 1,200 plants, and focus on main renewables technologies. And thank you for the invitation again.
Thank you very much, Eleonora, for being here with us today. So you've heard them. You have 3 top experts today. We're going to talk about the opportunities in the Italian market. So first, I'd like to invite Andrea, who's going to be the first one to give a presentation, to prepare your screen, Andrea, and your mic and everything. And whilst Andrea does that, let me tell you a bit about how we're going to organize this today. So essentially, we're going to have 3 presentations from each of them, and then we're going to take questions from you guys in the audience. So to send your questions, do not use the chat. We use those just to talk informally. Use the Q&A box at the bottom on your toolbar, because that allows us to sort the questions out much better. So just send them through the Q&A box and we will take them at the very end, okay? Just a reminder for everyone, we are recording this session and we will send you a link to the recordings and also the materials that you're seeing on screen today. So don't worry, you will have access to that. And I'd just like once again to welcome everyone. I see there are people from everywhere to learn here about the Italian market. So welcome. Andrea, please unmute your microphone and go for it.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks, Belen, again for your introduction. In today's presentation, I'm gonna talk about how to de-risk the development of large-scale PV project in Italy. So
just use the cursor keys, the little arrows.
Yeah,
there we go.
Great.
Yes,
okay, cool.
it is.
Sorry. So yeah, I already present myself and the company, so we can go straight to the topic of this presentation. How is the situation in Italy? So the PNIEC, so the name that you can see on the top of this slide, stands for Integrated National Energy and Climate Plan. This plan is prepared by the government and set the ambitious goal of 30 gigawatts of solar to be installed by 2030. So in order to achieve this kind of amazing number for the next decade, it is expected that we have to build something like 1 gigawatt per year with large-scale PV plants, all mostly in agricultural lands. So important note here for the foreign attendees, agricultural PV, in the agricultural PV, incentives are not allowed by law. So this target must be achieved in a subsidy-free regime. However, this is not, I think, in my opinion, the issue to get in the target provided by the PNIEC. But the main obstacle so far is the authorization process. So a process can last between 18 and 24 months. And there are continuous conflicts between authorities like a nation, region, and province. So lots of conflicts between different levels of planning authorities. That's why it's largely understood in Italy that unblocking these procedures will be a crucial step to move ahead with this amazing target of 1.5 gigawatt per year, of course. So in this context, I will show you how the project design phase must be of help instead of extend and complicate the permitting procedures. An updated and feasible design will prevent from material amendments, which can be risky for the project and can extend the expected timeline of as I said before, around 18-24 months. So next slide, I'm gonna talk about initially how we can select a site. Then I can give you some insights around the grid connection. And finally, I'll give you some information with regards of the project design during early stage of the development. So in the site selection, the most important part is, without any doubt, the environmental constraints analysis. So this is the key activity for the selection of the project, for the project area. The area must be free from any constraints. So there is a national guideline which identifies not suitable zones for a RES project. This guideline has been transposed by almost all the regions in the form of WebGIS system. Here you can see a picture of WebGIS of Apulia region. So we have in green, light blue, brown, all of them are the area that for different reasons must be avoided by the project. So I would like to say that this is a kind of powerful tool, and it is very helpful to identify quite quickly good sites. And again, it's very helpful, of course, obviously for developers. Unfortunately, not all the regions transposed these guidelines, so it's not available for all of the 20 regions in Italy. So once this investigation is completed, which is the key part again of the site selection, we can look at the terrain characteristic. So terrain here I listed some of the typical analysis that should be done. Anyway, I would like to focus on the last 3 items because obviously presence of obstacles is a general indication. Buried cables, gas pipeline, we can see that in all the country worldwide, like an issue for PV. So topography, orography, and soil assessment is more, I think, site specific for the Italian market. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah, regarding the topography, Italy is generally very hilly. So the slope analysis can be of help identifying potential issue, mainly for the selection of the PV mounted structure. So just to give you an example, trackers manufacturer define maximum slopes that are around 15% north-south and 30% west-east direction. So in ETA, we can, for example, we use several tools that get instant information about the terrain slope. And this figure here show just an example. So we have a plot for PV installation, and in red, you can see areas that are considered steep slopes, and so must be avoided by the tracker system installation. Afterwards, we can send this map, this information to other software like AutoCAD, and we can easily prepare PV layouts with realistic DC capacity. Another important factor aspect is the far shading. So the impact of orography should be carefully considered in Italy for the same reason of the topography, because again, it's very hilly, the mainland in Italy. So for orography, I mean shadings like mountains and hill around the project area. And in this figure here, this is typical figure from PVSys. And you can see an example of an horizon file imported from Solar GIS in this case. And the gray area is means the horizon profile, the gray one, and the yellow one is the solar profile. I would say the solar profile. When the gray area overlaps the yellow one, it means that there will be a certain irradiation loss. So obviously there will be a decrease in the future of the actual global horizontal radiation. So this is something that should be carefully considered also in the energy yield model. And lastly, let me talk about the soil. So the main risk in Italy, I would say, is the hydrogeological condition of the project area. Hydrogeological risks can affect future developments, but obviously during later stage of the development with flood risk assessment, geotechnical investigation, you can dive into this topic much better. However, in Italy, it is possible to have preliminary info from inventory maps available online. So there is one here, the ISPRA. This is the Italian Institute for Environmental Protection and Research. And the ISPRA makes available online maps like we have here. Those maps provide historical landslide and flood risk for a given location. So yeah, I think the message is really important to get as much information as possible from tools like, as we can see, we saw today, WebGIS and other inventory maps like the one from ISPRA. That could be really helpful to better understand what could be the issue for your site. So now, next slide, I'm gonna give you some insight, really brief one, regarding the grid connection. The Italian grid code offers different ways to connect a large-scale solar farm. So depending on the export, the requested export capacity, it's possible to connect your plant either with Terna, which is the TSO. TSO is Transmission System Operator, or with one of the distribution system operators, DSOs. The larger one is Edistribuzione, formerly Enel. When the export capacity is above 10 megs, then you have to apply with Terna, and you have to apply in high voltage. When it's below this threshold, you can apply with a DSO in medium voltage. Obviously, if your plant is above 10 megs, then you will need to install an MV HMI transformer station with the different costs, and those costs will be covered, will be part of the EPC scope. So this is something that must be considered in advance, depending, of course, of the scale of the project. Anyway, I would like to highlight that there is, let's say, a third way to connect. The grid code provides another option. This way offers the possibility to split a project above 10 megs in a number of smaller one with the capacity of obviously below than 10 megs. In this case, you can then connect your project to the DSO in medium voltage. So there are pros and cons to be evaluated. As a general comment, obviously it's really important the potential lengths of the MV and the HV lines. It's also very, very important the capabilities of the grids of the HV and MV lines in your area. And this evaluation will tell you what is the best connection application solution for your project. So let's go to, I think is the last one. So yeah, brief information about introduction about the design and technology. We already emphasized the importance of preparing an updated and feasible and also cost-effective design at the early stage of the development. So in ATA, normally we propose to our clients comprehensive analysis of different scenarios. These scenarios will take into account several inputs. Those inputs can be provided both by the client or by the technical advisor. For example, I want to go with bifacial model rather than monofacial one. I want to install a tracker system and so on. From these scenarios, we can create a number of scenarios, up to 30 scenarios, and then we can generate a number of PV layouts, and we estimate the bill of material. It is something that will be very important at, as I said, early stage of development before apply for the whole application with the planning authority. Finally, with these numbers, we can run PVC simulation, and at the very end of this process, we identify the optimal solution for a given site area. So here from this table, you can see just some inputs that we can consider. So decision like, for example, selection between strings and central inverters are important, because if we want to go with the centralized inverter, that will need we need more electrical cables to be approved by the planning authority. So this is something that should be carefully considered before the planning application. Same, I would say, it's for the the multi-structure technologies, where there's a clear implication in terms of planning approval if we want to go with the tracker system or fixed multi-structure, because there are different heights of the structure. Another, understand also, yeah, the bifacial technology can be a cost-effective solution, must be evaluated before rather than later. Regarding this topic, there's been obviously lots of concern in the industry, because it's not that easy to identify realistic albedo levels for a given terrain. In ATA, we have developed a methodology which can provide these values with short campaign measurements. So I guess this is another interesting point to be considered. Finally, here I put the optimal ratio, the CAC ratio. This, yeah, again, it's really important because we can maximize the yield at lower capex with the optimal DCAC ratio. So this can be found with an approach of different scenarios. I already told you in this slide. So to conclude my very brief introduction in the market from a technical perspective, in a subsidy-free area and with such long authorization procedures, the more we go in depth in terms of design, in our opinion, at early stage, the more we will prevent risk for our project and in terms of future year production. So I think that this is the main message that I wanted to share with you guys, and I hope you find it helpful, and look forward to hearing from you with any question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. You do have a question already. Thank you very much for giving us that overview. We're going to move swiftly along. We'll do the questions afterwards. Do send the questions to the Q&A box. Carlo, can I please ask you to prepare your screen, your microphone?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. And while Carlo prepared, just a reminder, some new people have joined us. Just to let you know, we are recording the session and you'll have access to it and to the also to the materials. And I'd just like to also welcome everyone. I see that there are people from many different countries here learning about the Italian market. It's excellent. You know, there's 30 gigawatts to be built. So it's going to be one of the large markets. And Carlo, you're ready, so go for it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So I'll go, as I already introduced myself, I will go straight to the presentation, and considering also the quite tight time we have, I'll try to be as straight as possible. So, and to touch what I think are the main points in order to develop new solar projects in Italy in the next midterm future. So as Andrea also said, I think it's very important to start from the main basic fundamentals that are key to make the investment efficient and to generate as much profit as possible for the investors. So starting from that perspective, a key point is to well analyze all possible constraints affecting the site, because first of all, some of them might impede even the realization of a solar installation, and other kind of constraints might have an impact on the main CapEx structures by increasing CapEx, and this obviously might affect the financial model by the investors. We'll see also in the next slides how much important so far is the use destination of the land. There is a big fight between non-agricultural industrial versus agricultural land. We'll go back to this specific point because as already many people are saying, it is somehow a fake issue, and so we should try to treat it as actually it is. And the main conclusion is, yes, it is possible, it should be possible to realize PV projects on agricultural lands, even if based on our current legislation, such projects are not eligible to benefit from state incentives, so to join public tenders run by the state through the GSE, but it is possible by entering into private bilateral PPAs, and we'll go back to this specific point. What is important is try to select those sites which, even if formally used for agricultural purposes, actually they are either not used at all for agricultural purposes, or the kind of agriculture which is carried on those sites is very poor. So this is another preliminary check which I think is key to avoid the project to be then stopped by the environmental impact assessment run by the competent public authority, a local entity. Then to check also in advance the connection availability by speaking either with the TSO or with ENL, as the case may be, whether high voltage, mid voltage, but this is a key point. While we are speaking, the Italian TSO Terna is simply invaded by tens of giga of new requests for connection, and obviously they cannot satisfy all of them by definition. So there are certain criteria to be followed, which are time related, connection availability related, and it is key to have that kind of dialogue on a very, let's say, formal basis in order to preliminary check that this solution, the connection solution, can actually become real. I also stress, the importance of something which is many times underestimated, and I think it's not only because we are in Italy, but it's true anywhere, even in North America, even in the UK. I think it's very important to carry on a well level of investigations towards project developers and landowners, and this to avoid that going forward you discover that you have a compliance related matter, which at the end might be an issue also for the internal compliance by the investor or simply for reputational reasons. And this kind of investigations, that's our experience, should be for sure deeper than the normal know your customer procedures that is used in conventional institutions, either banks or equity investors, as the case may be. So there are professional investigators, and it's good, in my opinion, to have a file in advance. So whatever should happen in the future, you can show to have used a proper diligence, and so to be out of any possible liability. And this is important not only for the physical person in charge of structuring that specific investment, but also for the legal entity investing on a project and for its reputation. We are now experiencing many discussions in the last few days in Rome. There has been the so-called State Generals touching the new Green Deal, and it seems, obviously, it's only what seems to everybody reading the media, that there is a favorable environment supporting renewables, not only renewables, going in the direction of the energy transition, trying to accelerate the energy transition. We'll see what we would expect in concrete from new envisaged legislation by the Italian government. And this is exactly the point I was touching in the next slides, because so far, as also Andrea stressed in his presentation, the long authorization process is a killer application. You know where you start, you do not know when the authorization process actually might finish. We can say that the average timeline is around 18-24 months. And what we would expect by Decreto Semplificazioni, which is an expected new law that should be approved hopefully by the end of the year, a material way to simplify the authorization process, to align regional requirements, to avoid that any given region might have their own perspective, their own requirements different from the others. So trying to have as much as possible, the same requirements by the region in order to successfully reach the so-called shovel-ready status. And then what I hope will be implemented is one steering committee coordinating different entities that might be inclined to follow their own interest, which theoretically might be in conflict with the others. We have the Italian TSO, we have the environmental ministry, which is important for some environmental impact assessment, not let's say so much related to solar, but mainly for wind. We have the Italian GSE, which is the entity managing public tenders and paying feed-in tariff and awarding now long-term PPAs for wind projects and PV projects on industrial sites. So we have the Energy Authority. It's good to have the regions. It's good to have all of these entities well coordinated. Now, agricultural versus industrial areas. Just a very few numbers. Any year in Italy only, 125,000 hectares used for agriculture are left to agricultural purposes. So they actually are not cultivated anymore. So if you think that to realize by assuming 1 second, should we realize 40 giga on agricultural areas only, we would need 80,000 hectares. So that's a quite clear number. 10% of the agricultural land in Italy is not utilized, is not actually used for agricultural purposes. So what we would expect from the government is a clear identification of the agricultural areas which, either because of the specific nature of the land or for other reasons, are not well exploited and cannot be exploited for rich agricultural use, and so solar installations there might be a proper way to exploit those lands. So this is something that we would expect will arrive in the very next future. Now we are speaking about solar. In order to reach the targets we have by 2030, I think that revamping and repowering is a key point, because by revamping and repowering only, we might we might match a good percentage of the goal we need to achieve by 2030. And storage is another key point. We know that now Terna a few months ago awarded some peakers for capacity remuneration. I think that storage next to solar and wind projects as well should be allowed to be remunerated for their ancillary services to the grid as well. Now, we expect in the next 18-24 months a strong development of utility scale, solar utility scale projects in the country. So we think that there will be also a quite important market of sale of authorization shovel-ready projects. And now we are entering into also the PPA-related topic, which I would like to touch in my next slide, which is a key point for any investors wanting to buy a project shovel-ready, above all in this specific period of time in which the energy price is very much depressed, as all of us know very well. Now we spoke about how much important is repowering and revamping. It's very important for the investors in order to optimize by repowering and revamping activities to be able to rely on the kind of authorizations they need to get in order to revamp/repower their existing plants. We already emphasized how much important is this specific activity. We mentioned and we touched already the capacity market and how much important would be for battery storage solutions next to solar and wind. So unpredictable renewable technology to benefit from remuneration for their ancillary services to the grid. And this is something that so far has not found well answered by the government, but the fact that new peakers different from traditional CCGTs, now quite old technologies, but having a much more flexible technology, they just have been awarded capacity market tenders by Terna, and there is now in the market an important deal managed by an institutional financial advisor in this specific segment. It's a very positive sign looking forward. Now, going to the PPA market, for sure, when we speak about unsubsidized projects, PPA is a key topic. Now, as far as solar projects are concerned, to the extent they are based on our current legislation on industrial areas, they might benefit from long-term PPAs awarded by the state through public tenders, which is a lot, let me say, because the last tender actually experienced an average feed-in tariff PPA value, let me say, around 57 euro cents per kilowatt hour, if I'm not wrong. And if, it's pointless to stress how much it is, and it is for 20 years. To the extent solar projects are on agricultural areas, they should structure the revenue stream either on a pure merchant base case or on mid-long-term PPA, bilateral PPAs, either corporate PPAs or PPAs with utility/traders. Now, I need to say that the Italian market is very undeveloped from this perspective. So far, the market experience before the sanitary emergency related to the COVID situation, a very few cases of long-term PPAs, 10 years, 7 years, 5 years. I've been personally involved in 2 out of the 3 that the market experienced so far. That's mainly why the market is not well developed. A key point, let me touch what I think is the main key point here. Right now, and probably for the next 2 years, I think it's not possible for an investor having a project shovel ready in this time period to benefit from a long-term PPAs, because it would mean mainly to kill their financial model, considering where the energy prices are now. And I think that by the end of the year, the average of the energy price in the country should be between 34, 36 euro cents. So much lower than it was last year. This means that, in my opinion, an investor should bridge the next 12, 18, 24 months before entering into a long-term PPAs, by which I mean 10 years plus, either private or corporate, in order not to be so much penalized. So how it is possible to realize projects shovel-ready in this timeline without entering into long-term PPAs, which might mean without leverage the investments on a long-term basis and on a non-recourse basis by entering into a project finance with an institutional lender. That's the key point. So either it is possible to structure such a hybrid corporate bridge, having some project financing mechanic in place for a short time period, 18 months plus, between 18 months and 2-3 years, so that it is possible to repay that debt, that facility line, that bridge, whatever it is, once it will be possible to enter into a long-term PPA when the market will be recovered, when the energy prices will be higher and will be back to their levels where they stand before the COVID situation started. So this is something where I think is important to think and where it is important to have the support by the financing market, by the lending market, not only by the usual traditional institutional lenders, but also by private debt funds, being able to structure specific projects, being available to match these expectations, this kind of demand. I need to say that I am involved in discussions with some lenders on these specific topics to bridge this kind of period in order then to be able to maximize the position for the investor once the market will be recovered. Another kind of PPA, and that's my last point, and then I promise to finish my presentation, something that I would expect, even if it will not be, let's say, it will not play the most important part in the PPA market in Italy, is the corporate PPA. I would expect that in the country, big corporate anyway, for main intangible and tangible reasons, quite pointless to be stressed now, would be available to enter into mid-long-term PPAs. And there it is possible probably to have a premium on top of the same mid-long-term PPA with the utility traders. So I think it's valuable to spend time to negotiate with big corporates. I'm thinking about Fiat, big corporates that we have in Italy that might need anyway, mainly for communication, green labels related reasons, to enter into this kind of mid-long-term PPAs. Thanks a lot. I don't know if you have questions. We can answer them at the end.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Eleonora to share your screen. And Carlo, actually, I would appreciate if you can take a look at the Q&A. There is a few questions for you and maybe answer them by text, because let's see how much time we have at the end. I'm just not sure we'll have enough time to answer them live. We'll see how we go. But do keep sending the questions, and Andrea is also answering them by text. So Eleonora, let me see.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, perfect.
Okay, please, one moment. Okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. So I will go straight to the point, and I throw it away some charts, considering that Carlo and Andrea touch a lot of points. So basically, going directly to the point, we presented before Enel Green Power.
So can you put that in big screen, please, Eleonora? Sorry.
Yes, I will do it, but it seems.
Don't worry that you have at least 12 minutes, so you can take your time. That's
great.
Fine.
In Italy, let me say that Enel Green Power started its history something like 10 years ago, when probably renewables were considered a little bit exotic by someone. within the need of incentives and higher cost of technology. As we reminded just now with Andrea's speech, today the Piano Nazionale Integrato Energia Clima, PNIEC, is expecting a huge market for renewables in terms of new installed capacity. I mean that more or less it depends on the estimation, but we expect something like plus 30 gigawatt on regarding PV, including PV on rooftop, and more plus 10 gigawatt of wind utility scale project. For sure, as Enel, we are strongly focused in this moment on building up a pipeline, a consistent pipeline on both the technologies to support the energetic transition and to provide this plan with a contribute, as the other operators, let me say, that are doing in this moment. I don't want to bore you with any specific technical aspects, and I don't want to repeat what my colleagues told you before. So I'll try to go straight to some ingredients that probably can help us to view the market in Italy today for RES development. I try to list some of the most important ones. So basically, we have the authorization processes, as we mentioned before, and I will go through later. Some means to dispel that are very interesting. Technology and business models, the one that we used to apply in each market, considering each market features and peculiarity. And finally, sustainability and stakeholder engagement. Let's start with the first one. As we told just now, to achieve PNIEC's target, we expect something like 4 gigawatt of new authorized projects or plants in operation per year, split between PV and wind technology. And as Carlo was mentioning before, today, the average time to get a wind authorization is something like 5 years for wind and more than 1 year for PV. So for sure, no fitting with the target and timing of the decarbonization process expected by PNIEC. But probably you read a lot during last weeks and last months on all the work that the government is doing during last weeks in terms of simplification of authorization process to basically speed up this kind of investment and to facilitate to catch the PNIEC target. Also looking from an economy relaunch point of view. The second ingredient, some myths to dispel. We used to listen a lot about the land use and land consumption, and we commented before. To get the 2030 PNIEC target, Italy is not going to be covered by panels at all. I mean that if I ask you the area of Italy that will be impacted by all the PV new capacity, no rooftop for sure, expecting by 2030, I don't know if someone knows the answer, but we try to perform this analysis, and also other operators did it, and it's quite interesting to see that the answer is something like very, very close to Monza Brianza area. That is the small red area that are concentrated in the top of the chart. Just to complete the analysis, we did the same exercise for wind, and the area is close to Prato, that probably a lot of people know. So this is something on which we are working also with our stakeholders, just to dispel some expectation that sometimes are not correct if we look at these numbers. Going on the next point, business on the next ingredient, business model and technology. I read also some interesting question before, and I will be happy to answer. As we know, RES production and PV production is strongly depending on sun presence. But we tested successfully that coupling a storage equipment with the PV power plant can help the plant to overcome its residual limits in terms of flexibility and predictability. This business model, we implemented this business model in other countries of our presence, where there is the possibility to basically tackle different kind of services that the power plant integrated with the storage can provide to itself and to the system. In particular, coupling a storage with the PV, targeting a different kind of services can help the power plant to reduce, for example, its risk of production predictability. For instance, in terms of negative impact for curtailment, saving the energy to be used later, or reducing unbalancing, helping the power plant to match the forecasted profile that has been forecasted on the market before. On top of this, in some markets, these kind of projects allows the power plant also to enter into new services market, like the ancillary services. And probably this is something that from a market overall point of view is very efficient, because help renewables to overcome their residual limit in terms of predictability and flexibility. Looking at the cost, today, as probably all we know, the cost of PV recorded a huge decrease, something like 80% in last 9 years. A lot of people telling more than 100% in last 10 years, but this is the trend. Looking at what I was commenting before, this is something that we see as a similar expectation for energy storage. In other words, we are saying the same history of PV for this kind of technology. In particular, I'm referring to lithium battery storage that are the ones more used, more implemented from, let me say, commercial application. And we recorded something like 50% of decrease in last 5 years, and we expect further decrease for the next ones. And for sure, market evolution that can encourage this kind of business model will help the technology to be more efficient. Then, last but not least, sustainability. This is not a slogan. This is the one that we apply. This is the ingredient that we apply over the world to go ahead with our power plants design and development. I mean that we start thinking to a sustainable approach by the beginning of the phase of the development. It means, for example, that we are strongly focused on land selection, starting by the not agricultural or from the agricultural well-known environmental constraints, for example. Moreover, we used to focus on stakeholder engagement with a strong listening approach by the beginning to basically go ahead together for the developing and at the same time the integration of the project in the environment. So this is, Belen, a very quick overview that I would like to provide you and with all the participants. And just to complete, I would like to comment that our topics probably are not so recent, because someone started a few years ago to talk about it, but we are quite optimistic, and probably we will find very, very soon the solution for the last challenges to go ahead successfully for PV development in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. You've done it also in record time. So, but Carlo and Andrea have been like very busy, like answering questions. So let's just take a few of the ones that have just come up. Andrea and Carlo, could you just unmute your microphone so that we can all talk? We have 5 minutes or so. We can ask some questions.
Yeah.
So a lot of questions here have been about storage, right? Is it required? Are they going to pay capacity? Can we use hybrid approaches? So I've seen the answers. You know, there is no legislation as of yet, but is it expected that legislation is going to be passing anytime soon? Carlo, perhaps you can.
So yes, I think that the Italian is part of, and thanks to God, is part of the European Union. And so we mainly follow also what other EU member states are used to do, also in this specific context. So. So far, the only revenue stream for deriving from battery storage solutions is related to the energy sale that such solutions can secure. And this is not sufficient considering the cost of such kind of technology to sustain the relevant investments. But I would expect in the short term run to have a new legislation allowing battery storage solutions to join public tenders in order for them to compete with CCGTs and other kind of technologies in order to be remunerated for their ancillary services to the grid. I'm making reference to the primary, secondary, tertiary frequency that so far it's something for which only CCGTs and now new peakers are remunerated. To the extent also battery storage, and I'm very confident they might be more flexible in certain respects then, and also economically speaking more competitive, because they do not need to secure a long-term gas supply as it is the case of CCGTs. They will be allowed to get paid for such services. So once you can combine such kind of remuneration together with the energy sale related remuneration, and assuming that going forward such technology cost is going to be reduced, all of this to say that in the next 18 months time, this is a technology that should develop a lot in the country.
Thank you very much. Carlo, would you like to add anything, Eleonora? I think from the perspective of a developer, this is also an important question, you know, when and how, because I'm sure you're planning on the background, but unless you have the go-ahead from the government, you can't really do much, especially the capacity payments, you know, it's not clear how people are going to get paid.
Yes, going directly to the point regarding the storage coupled with PV, I read a lot of questions. Just to, sorry for simplifying, but a battery provides you with a very simple thing. It charges energy at one time and provides the grid at another time. But we think that the real value of this kind of technology is basically to define the best size and services target for each specific project with a tailor-made approach, not with a standard approach to enable all the renewables independently by their size, their resources, and so on to the same services. I mean that, for example, exactly the same project with a different market or with a different kind of hedging strategy can be supported by and can be more valuable with a different project design in terms of storage that we are going to couple with it. For sure, as Carlo was mentioning before, it's very difficult now to repay a storage with in this market with just one application. And this is not so common also in other markets for other experience. Usually storage is something that can apply the risk instrument for some aspect for renewables and can help them to enter into a blue ocean market like the ancillary services one. We tested successfully in US, where a lot of markets are supporting this kind of hybrid projects, or also in Australia and so on. I think that the other government, as they solve other kind of aspects, will arrive to the same point. This is not innovation from our point of view. This is a commercial and very real business application.
I think if anything is innovation from the point of view how we think about loads, right? Because first we were like for hundreds of years, like, okay, I produce energy when I need it, and now we have resource and we have demand and we have to make sure those two match up, and it's not easy. And it's complete different innovation in terms of how we think about energy. But other than that, really, I agree with you.
Clear, probably the innovation aspects are related to different kind of storage technology that, for example, can support the long-term storage, like the one that we experience, for example, in some South Italy islands, where you have a consumption of 10 people for all the year, and then you scale on to something like 1,000 people for 3 months, you know. So a storage coupled with rest in this moment cannot support, but probably the great challenge is try to insist on this kind of different technology to charge and discharge with a more flexible way, and to face a challenge like the one that, for instance, I described so far.
How interesting. And a lot of questions as well, and this is my last question, and then we'll go, is about agriculture and agrivoltaic projects. I never heard this word before, so this has been interesting. Can we mix these things? You know, can it work? I know that Andrea wanted to answer it, but I also open to the two of you. But Andrea, maybe you can start. I mean, how feasible are these projects? How do they work?
Yeah, I mean, there has been lots of rumors in Italy in the last months regarding the agrivoltaic. So basically, it's co-developing in the same area, both solar PV and agricultural. So it sounds like a great approach, and we can move ahead with more solar in agricultural. Also, I would say that with farmers all over Italy struggling and demanding of help because of the current situation, will be, of course, it could be a good time to talk about this solution. Anyway, I will say that also there are lots of developers now. I came across a few projects with this kind of solution in early stage of the permission. Anyway, I will say that this is not going to be a game changer for PV in agricultural lands. I've seen a great slide from Eleonora about the soil consumption. That was, I think, amazing, because it's clear that we don't have a problem with the consumption of the soil in Italy. We do have a problem with the simplification. So we need a clear message, as also Carlo mentioned earlier. We need a clear message about which kind of land could be useful, because there are plenty of lands now in Italy. So again, I think that will be something that we definitely need to go in depth regarding design in detail. So about agrivoltaic, but can help with a small share of the target of the PNIEC.
Carlo, Eleonora, I don't know, this is maybe, I don't know if it's a legal issue, but it's certainly a technical issue, you know, from the point of view, especially of cleaning. So what do you think?
We are developing some kind of this project, coupling agrivoltaic with the PV on agricultural. Let me say that, as I was mentioning before, it's not a slogan, but with a strong focus on sustainability, environmental stakeholder involvement. probably it can support some way and enable the development. Andrea was highlighting as well that sometimes we have fear of something that we don't know, because the land use of all the capacity of 2013, something like this, that is amazing. And we check it a lot of time. And as other operators perform the same, okay, probably is correct, you know, I'm joking. But probably sometimes we have a not clear perception on the real figures that will impact really
the landscape.
Okay, we will leave it here for now. I just wanted to thank you very much, Carlo. Thank you very much, Eleonora. Thank you very much, Andrea, for sharing your
Thanks a lot to everybody.
and for being with us today. And obviously, thank you to all our audience as well. So, you know, we are actually doing a follow-up webinar on lowering LCOE, you know, bifacial PV projects in Italy. So do sign up for that. The link is on the chat, or, you know, in our archive. So thank you very much and see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.